Hello, everyone. What's going on? Bleacher Report. My name is Rodney. I'm excited. Number one, because it's a different time that we're going live. It just feels like a little bit different energy. But number two, because, and this is not an NBA show, but you're looking at the face of a Jazz fan who just drafted Ace Bailey and Walter Clayton Jr. So the Raiders have an unbelievable draft. The Jazz have an unbelievable draft. Feels pretty good to have some competent front office leadership. I see people in the chat already talking. If you're watching live on Bleacher Report, thank you so much for joining. We got polls to vote in. We got things to say in the chat. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure you're commenting because you can't vote in the polls after the fact on YouTube. So make sure you are letting me know your thoughts on everything in the comments. It is Thursday. Like I said, we got to go a little earlier today because Bleacher Report has their live draft show covering the second round of the draft at 6 o'clock, I believe, my time. Anyway, it's 4 o'clock my time. Not sure where you guys are watching. Probably East Coast, West Coast, all over the world. I know I got one of my patrons is from Australia. So pretty good stuff there. I want to talk about a couple things today. Bleacher Report came out with an article that stated and listed all the new coaches, like the Marty Schottenheimer, Brian Schottenheimers of the world, the Pete Carrolls of the world, the Liam Cohens of the world, Kellen Moore, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. I think that's every new coach this year, and of course Pete Carroll. And they ranked them from least likely to succeed to most likely to succeed, and they put the win total that they think the Raiders are going to have. Not to spoil it, but it's already in the title of my video. We're going to talk about that a little bit. That's a Bleacher Report article. And then there's two players that could be on the block that the Raiders are, I don't know if they're looking to trade for, but they're interesting potential areas of need depending on injury and depending on development of young guys. And I'm just going to start out with a bang here. The first player that I don't know if the Raiders have been sniffing around. I'm sure John Spytek is doing his due diligence with every single person, but that the media is kind of partnering us up with is Terry McLaurin. Now, what I want to talk about specifically is the compensation that we'd have to give up to get somebody like a Terry McLaurin, who, after his first season, has had, I believe it's 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons or 4 straight. It's either 4 or 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Now, his touchdown totals have been low his whole career. That's because they didn't have any good quarterbacks. They finally have a good quarterback, Jay Daniels, and he had like 13 touchdowns last season. Now, the question of the day that we have to discuss before I get into this article here and the poll about if the Raiders should trade for Terry McLaurin is, do you think our wide receiver room is enough? Because the Bleacher Report article that has us winning a certain amount of games notes that one of our deficiencies is the lack of proven commodities at the wide receiver position. And that's true. They might prove themselves once the season starts, but as of right now, they are unproven. That's the whole point. Rookie wide receivers, Dante Thorne, Jack Besh. We don't know how they're going to perform. So if we talk about the first trade proposal, trade idea here, this is the first one we have to talk about. This is just Blog Baby. And it says Raiders trade idea could give Geno Smith final piece for lethal offense. This is by Brad Berman. We've read a couple articles from him, and we're going to talk about it. And then we're going to vote in the poll here. This was yesterday, June 25th. I point out every time I see it, but I hate seeing all the losses on the right here. Hopefully that changes next year. The Las Vegas Raiders had a successful offseason. They hired a credible head coach in Pete Carroll, landed a solid upgrade at quarterback with Geno Smith, and running back Ashton Jeanty headline what looks to be a very promising draft class. But it takes more than one offseason to upgrade every area on the roster like the one previous Raiders regime had left behind. The wide receiver core is led by solid, reliable, and perpetual underrated Jacoby Myers, but he's not what anyone would call a true number one wide receiver. That piece of the offense is missing right now, left to potentially be addressed next offseason, barring something unforeseen. However, trade scenarios involving players who seem to be on the way out or are openly disgruntled are easy to offer up at the point in this offseason, realistic or Otherwise, trade idea gives Raiders final piece to load up around Geno Smith. Fox Sports proposed one perfect landing spot for several notable players who skipped their team's mandatory minicamp. We forgot a space there, but that's all right. Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin is entering the final year of his contract, and he made his unhappiness clear via his absence. So he was an obvious inclusion on Heyman's list, with the Raiders tabbed as the perfect fit. Oh, I said Heyman. Hellman, sorry, excuse me. Hellman started his analysis by making it clear he's confident Terry McLaurin will remain a Commander, and how it makes no sense for Washington to not extend him, but the idea of him being a Raider is interesting. If I'm dreaming up a perfect landing spot for McLaurin, Vegas really sounds fun. Talk about a big swing from a team that hasn't had a lot to get excited about. The Raiders are already in decent shape for Geno's first season. Brock Bowers is a star. Ashton Genty should be one soon. Jacoby Myers is a solid receiver. Vegas still needs to upgrade its receiver room. Rather than take your chances in the draft, why not ship a pick or two to Washington and lock in McLaurin for the rest of his prime? Make fun of me if you want, but a Raiders skill group of McLaurin, Bowers, Genty, and Myers might be the best in the AFC West. That's a strong words here. I don't know. Beyond the idea of giving McLaurin the contract he seeks with an apparent floor of $30 million per year, the Raiders would also have to consider what they would need to give up to get McLaurin. On the idea of McLaurin possibly being available to trade, Mitch Milani of Bleacher Report, recently included the Raiders on his list of potential landing spots as well. He proposed a trade package to bring the two-time Pro Bowler to Las Vegas, and it looked like this. We get Terry McLaurin in the 7th. The Washington Commanders get a 2nd and a 4th. Even accounting for the inevitable contract extension, a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick seems like a very reasonable cost to get a player of McLaurin's caliber. As far as personality, he seems to fit with the culture Carroll is building as well. And any hypothetical pursuit of McLaurin will be fruitless if the Commanders take care of business and extend him as they should. But there's a faint idea out there that the Raiders won't have to wait to add their final piece of the puzzle. If they feel compelled to check in on McLaurin, nothing would stop General Manager John Spytek from making a call. So I get it. It would be a lot of money, and it would cost us, a 2nd-round pick at least. I don't disagree with what this article said when it said that Terry McLaurin, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty would be probably the best skill group in the AFC West. And I know what some of the people that are in the chat are thinking. Like Feet says here, proven commodity. Under that thinking, no rookies are any good. I understand saying, well, we don't know what these rookies can be. We might have a Puka Nacua on the roster. Let's pretend, hypothetically though, right, that Jack Besh becomes Puka Nacua. He's that good. Imagine Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, Terry McLaurin, Jacoby Myers, Puka Nacua. Just because you trade for Terry McLaurin doesn't mean that these rookies that are on the roster are now not going to develop into what they are. If they're that good, they will play. Simple. Now, because of that, you are saying this is a luxury trade if you already have somebody as good as a Puka Nacua. And that's where the argument is. But I don't think just because we have two rookies that have looked good, not without pads on, although I am buying a lot of stock into Jack Besh and Dante Thorne, that we should just not even consider Terry McLaurin if he would want to play for us, if we could afford it, and if the deal is for something worth doing. Now, I wouldn't give a first-round pick for Terry McLaurin at all. I would trade for him for the right price. But now I ask you guys, should the Raiders trade for Terry McLaurin? Yes, no matter what, for the right price, or no, we've got enough. And if you're saying no, we've got enough, who do you have more faith in being as good as Jacoby Myers? Is it Jack Besh or is it Dante Thorne? Because right now, it might be a coin toss. I don't know. That's tough to say. But I did foresee this poll going this way. I would say the people who suggest that we should trade for Terry McLaurin do not know the capabilities of a Dante Thornton or a Jack Besh. Because I do think one of those two guys has the potential to develop into a number one wideout. That doesn't mean that they ever will come close to it. But to sit here and say, well, they don't have that number one on the roster, so they should trade for one. We don't know for sure what this team's going to look like next year. And I've actually, not to tie it into the NBA, but I've seen people say, well, the Utah Jazz, the team that I root for, they still have the worst roster in the West. I don't know how you can say that when you don't know how good Ace Bailey or Walter Clayton could be. Like, what if Ace Bailey comes in and is that next Donovan Mitchell? Donovan Mitchell came in for the Jazz and averaged 20 points per game like that. They made the playoffs. They won a series in the first round against the Clippers. It just takes one diamond in the rough for all of this conversation to be completely moot. And I do think that people who follow the Raiders understand that if we were to trade for a Terry McLaurin, it would signal that they don't think Dante Thornton or Jack Besh are going to be as good as maybe we initially have been hearing, or that it's for very cheap. Because if they said, hey, you want Terry McLaurin, give us a third, I'm doing it tomorrow. But if it's a second and a fifth and a sixth, I'm like, I'll take my chances with Jack Besh and Dante Thornton. So I do think it's something that we should absolutely consider. But ultimately, I don't disagree with people saying, I think I'm good. We've got enough. So I totally understand that. Now, this trade that has been floated in the ether, and this is also just Blog Baby that we're going to read about, has to do with the Christian Wilkins injury. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but I'm pretty sure that Christian Wilkins is back in a walking boot. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, but it's something that seems like it's not looking good. And I don't know if the reports that we've heard are true or not true. I'm still waiting for a Scheffner or a Rappaport or a Pelissero or an Albert Breer to say something about Christian Wilkins. But I would have to guess that he's probably going to start the year in the PUP list, which means he's going to miss like 6 weeks or whatever, which is super unfortunate. Now, we have guys on the roster. We drafted some D tackles. We have some big boys that can plug up the middle. But there's another option out there, and it's somebody that the Raiders know all too well. So let's talk about this as we get closer to hearing some pretty bad news about Christian Wilkins, which is really unfortunate, but that's life. It is what it is. John Spytek, this is just Blog Baby, this is Levi. John Spytek has no excuse not to make this trade after the Christian Wilkins update. The Raiders may need to go out and find a replacement for their star defensive tackle. The Las Vegas Raiders are in a bit of a difficult situation as it pertains to defensive tackle Christian Wilkins. The former first-round pick signed a 4-year, $110 million deal with Las Vegas in 2024, but a broken foot suffered in Week 5 last year has put his stats in jeopardy for all of this season as well. That's so that's so unfortunate. Wilkins missed the entire offseason program and was recently spotted back in a walking boot. It is increasingly unlikely that he will be available for training camp. And if he needs another procedure done, he could miss the entire 2025 campaign. General Manager John Spytek re-signed fellow defensive tackle Adam Butler this offseason, which was a major move. He also drafted J.J. McGee and Tonka Hemingway in the middle rounds to bolster the depth, but the team needs a surefire starter along Butler to reach its potential this year. Raiders should trade for Browns defensive tackle Shelby Harris. This late in the offseason, almost every solid free agent has already signed with another team. It is too late to mortgage a high draft pick on a defensive tackle, but the Raiders can take advantage of another team that did. I see where this is going. In April's draft, the Cleveland Browns utilized the number 5 overall pick on Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. With Mason Graham expected to start right away, veteran Shelby Harris has now moved into a backup role, and Las Vegas could likely get him in a trade for incredibly cheap. If Harris's name sounds familiar, that would be because he was drafted by the Oakland Raiders in the 7th round of the 2024 NFL Draft and played 2 seasons with the franchise. He did not pan out with the silver and black, but he's put together an admirable 10-year career. Trading for Harris would likely cost just a 7th-round draft pick, and he can even be released by the team later this offseason if Graham really emerges as an every-down player. Harris is experienced enough and played a season for Pete Carroll on the Seahawks in 2022, so a late arrival may not be a hindrance to him. Over the last 2 seasons with the Browns, Harris played in 31 games, recorded 65 tackles, including 11 for loss, as well as a 3 as well as 3 sacks, 7 pass defenses, and 2 forced fumbles. These may not be superstar numbers, but he can more than get the job done in 2025. PFF also gave Harris an overall grade of 66.7 in 24, which ranked 44th out of 219 qualified defensive tackles. Pass rush grade was 25th. It's very possible that Wilkins' injury. It's very possible that Wilkins is healthy for the season, or that new regime feels they can rely on players like Leki Fotu or Jonah Lulai, Zachary Carter for production this season. However, Harris would be both cheap and a familiar option for the team and would give him a second chance with the silver and black. Okay, so I like this. And here's why I like it. What is on this thumbnail? What is the mantra of Pete Carroll? Compete. Shelby Harris is not a superstar, but he's had multiple seasons with at least 5 sacks. He had 5 sacks, 5.5 sacks in 2017, 6 sacks in 2019, 6 sacks in 21. He had 3 sacks the last 2 seasons, but a couple forced fumbles in there last 2 seasons, 65 total tackles, right? There is absolutely no risk, no harm in giving the Browns a 7th round pick to throw another defensive tackle in the ring for competition, to compete with the 3 guys that I just read, right? Lecky, John, and Zachary, and with the 2 rookies. And if you cut them, then oh well, it was a 7th round pick. I don't hate this at all. And I think this is much more likely and makes a lot more sense for us to go get somebody like a Shelby Harris than it is for us to go get somebody like a Terry McLaurin. So this is what I want to ask you guys. Same question. Should the Raiders trade for Shelby Harris? I would say, yeah. Why not? Again, even if we cut him, it's a 7th round pick. I trade a 7th for Shelby Harris. How about a 6th for Harris and a 7th? Yeah, you can get a little creative with it. And I know John Spytek probably has the fast track on what Wilkins' injury actually is. And if it is not good, they should try to make a move for a defensive tackle. Now, if they're really happy with Tonka and JJ and the depth that we have, even a Tyree Wilson who might play defensive tackle, then maybe you don't do it. Because in this article, it stated Shelby Harris was a 7th round pick. We used higher draft picks on defensive tackles. So that totally makes sense that they would want to roll with one of their rookies instead. But he would be extremely cheap from a trade standpoint. He'd be extremely cheap from a contract standpoint. And he was a Raider before, so there's a little bit of nostalgia there. He's like Butler. Not elite, but one of those solid guys you need to fill out your roster on a championship team. Totally agree. Totally agree. So, I just think that you got to take a flyer on him. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a little bit aggressive if you're John Spytek. And you guys seem to agree with me as well. So we're kind of lockstep here. Would I trade for Terry McLaurin? No, but I would definitely look into it. If the price is right, I would pull the trigger. Would I trade for Shelby Harris? Yes, absolutely. Get it done. Get somebody in here who can push these younger guys, who knows the system. And he also played for Pete Carroll in 2022, which I think the article said. That's key too. We know Pete Carroll loves the players that played for him in the past. Now he's not like Josh McDaniels, who will cut Alec Ingold, who was a Pro Bowl fullback, to bring in a fullback who's just not as good as him. Pete Carroll will take the players that are already here if they're good, and then he'll bring in his guys to fill out the rest of his locker room to push his culture forward. And that culture's winning, and that culture's competing. And speaking of winning, our own Brent Sobleski on Bleacher Report came out with an awesome article that discusses the new head coaches and their level of success, ranking them from top to bottom. This was posted June 24th. Ranking NFL head coaches based on possibility of success in year 1. And this is what he says. More than ever, the NFL stands for not for long, though that statement has morphed slightly into what have you done for me lately? Each NFL franchise is a billion-dollar industry that demands results, Thus, every person within the organization, except for the ownership group, operates on a year-to-year basis. When looking at it through that lens, how incoming individuals are set up for success is as critical as their ability to communicate to the locker room and design schemes. Last season, Antonio Pierce and Gerard Mayo lasted one season before being fired. The patience once seen in the league allowing new coaches to grow into their roles is a luxury in today's game. Results are necessary sooner rather than later. And you've seen that with the way that we're building our roster today. 7 new head coaches are implementing their philosophies and approaches this offseason. If history is any indication, only 1 or 2 will still be at their current post 5 years from now. Oh, their current post 5 years from now. I thought I was saying post 5 years, whatever. A strong start can lay the groundwork for long-term success in 2025. Which of the current incumbent crop of head coaches is poised to be the most successful? Listed in descending order. Kellen Moore, he has Kellen Moore going 3-14. Aaron Glenn, he has Aaron Glenn going 6-11. Duval, he has Liam Cohen going 8-9. Mike Vrabel 8-9. Ben Johnson 9-8. Pete Carroll 10-7. And he says here, Pete Carroll wasn't hired as the oldest head coach in NFL history for the Las Vegas Raiders to rebuild, just win, baby, and now. During an offseason with questionable moves to be made at quarterback, the Raiders completed the most practical transaction by adding 34-year-old Geno Smith. The 12-year veteran can prove stability to a Raiders organization that has lacked it for multiple years. Obviously, the quarterback's familiarity with Carroll after 5 long years together in Seattle with the Seahawks should ease his transition to a new team since he's already understanding the coach's culture and what he plans to achieve. Smith experienced a career renaissance during that stretch and made the Pro Bowl in 2 of the last 3 seasons. Granted, Smith is who he is, and he's not an elite quarterback with the skill set of Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert, who happen to play in the same division. However, Chip Kelly's hire as an offensive coordinator, coupled with Carroll's preferred style of play, indicates a more physical brand of football in Sin City. The selection of running back Ashton Jeanty with this year's 6th overall pick automatically places him in the spotlight as the team's offensive focal point. The Raiders may lack some explosive qualities and proven capabilities among their wide receivers, but tight end Brock Bowers can make up for some of them with his dynamic talent. Defensively, the Raiders are already feisty with a talented front led by Max Crosby. Patrick Graham remains in place as a play caller. Las Vegas isn't ready to dethrone the Chiefs, who have won 9 straight division titles, but it's not too difficult to imagine a world where Carroll's approach allows the Raiders to more than double last year's win total from 4-13 to 10-7. Okay. So a couple interesting things there. He mentioned, just like throughout this whole show that we've talked about, the unproven commodities at wide receiver. And he said that and still says 10-7 could happen. Now, I mentioned this a little in a video I posted today on YouTube, but I got cut off a little bit, so I wanted to give my full thoughts here. My initial prediction for the Raiders, their record is 9-8. I'm going to do another revamped prediction video after seeing what's going on in training camp with joy practices and with the preseason. Maybe we trade for a Shelby Harris or sign a Mike Hilton, right? And then I'll adjust. But the way I break down how I feel we're going to do season to season is this. Where do we have the quarterback advantage? Where do we have the head coach advantage? And that's how I use the parameters of that thinking to predict how many wins and losses we'll have. So if you look at our schedule from top to bottom, let's just say, and I don't think this is out of the realm of possibility, that we go 3-3 in the AFC West. I think that's totally fair. So you're 3-3. We play the AFC South, one of the worst divisions in football, coming into this season. Maybe it could change. We got to make our predictions based off of what we have in front of us. Let's say we go 3-1 in the AFC South. So now we are 6-4. Is that right? 3-3, 3-1, 6-4. Let's say now we go 1-3 against the NFC East. Tough division. So now we're 7-7. Okay? 3 games left that I left out are the Patriots, the Bears, the Browns. 3 teams who picked in the top 10. If you go 2-1 against those 3 teams, where you probably, as of right now, have the quarterback advantage in every single level, unless, Caleb Williams or Drake May takes a big step. And you have the coaching advantage. Pete Carroll's better coach than Mike Vrabel. Pete Carroll's better coach than Ben Johnson. Pete Carroll's better coach than Stefanski. Those are all good coaches, but as of right now, Pete Carroll's better coach. If you go 2-1 in those games, you're 9-8. If you go 3-0, you're 10-7. It's a pretty simple breakdown. Now, there are games that you win that you shouldn't have won. And there are games that you lost that you shouldn't have lost. So those games even out throughout a season. There could be some one-possession games that the ball bounces our way and we get to 11 wins. Or they all bounce the opposite way and we're 7-10. But if you look at it logically, where do we have the quarterback advantage? We split the division games. We go 3-1 in the AFC South. We go 1-3 in the NFC East. And we go 2-1 against the Browns, Patriots, and Bears. That's 9-8 like that. Now, I don't know if that's enough for the playoffs, but I do think 10-7 would be enough for the playoffs. And it's a competitive conference, and it's a competitive division. But what do you guys think about what we're going to do next year and Bleacher Report's prediction that we're going to go 10-7? I do think that the ranking system that they had here, where they go Kellen Moore, Aaron Glenn, Liam Cohen, this is worst to best, Vrabel, Johnson, Carroll, and Schottenheimer makes a lot of sense because Schottenheimer has the best quarterback of all those people, right? Dak's good. They've got some blue chippers on offense. Don't worry about Jace Leto. It'll be up on YouTube tomorrow, Patreon tonight, and you can probably rewatch it right here on Bleacher Report as well. I do think we have every chance to go 10-7. And the last thing I'll say to wrap this all up and put a nice little bow on it is if we make a trade out of nowhere for a Terry McLaurin or for a Shelby Harris, like we've mentioned before, that shores up another position that we have an area of concern for. If the preseason rolls around, and this is why I like to do a prediction early on in June. I don't want to do it when the schedule drops in March. Like, that's insane, crazy person who does that. Make an early prediction in June and then see how these people perform in the preseason. If Dante Thorne or Jack Besh is tearing it up and Ashton Gentry looks like the second coming, maybe I will go 10-7 instead of 9-8. What time do I start tomorrow? Same time as usual. 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Today was a little early because the second round of the NBA draft, is about to happen, and Bleacher Report's going to have their live show, so they didn't want me to do a cross-programming with that show. So, look, I hate to end it, Jason Leto. I know you just got here, but you can watch the replay. I will be back tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm all screwed on that. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for watching live. Whether you watch live on Bleacher Report, thank you so much. If you watch after the fact on YouTube, hit that like button, comment away, and please be sure to subscribe. It is free after all. No charge to you. I love you guys. We're so close to training camp. Ace Bailey, Walter Clayton, let's go. I'll see you next time.